Greetings and welcome back to the No Channel. This is Bernadette Johnson. I'm also known as Keziah or Kizzy. And today I'm coming to you with another video titled Psyops Attacks in the Media. Now, if you don't know what Psyops mean, Psyops stands for psychological operations. And in simple terms, it just means the psychological operations that it originated from, I think, the military. You know how like certain branches of the military, they have tactics to break down the mind and everything and control the mind. But anyway, that's where, it originated from. But in simple terms, psychological operations just simply means mind control and doing things to get people to react a certain way, to provoke a certain type of reaction out of people. So that's in simple terms, that's pretty much what psyops mean. And of course, it's not hard to believe that that's what the media does. The media is nothing but mind control. And don't think that these stories that they report in the news are just random stories, of happenings and things like that. A lot of times it's not. A lot of times they strategically select stories to report in the media to get us to believe a certain thing or to get us to react a certain kind of way. And a lot of times these things are orchestrated. Sometimes there are false flag attacks that they report and everything. And some of the stories are actually true stories, of course. But a lot of them are orchestrated stories and false flags attack to push a certain agenda. And of course, there are a certain group of people who actually control the media and control what stories are put in the media. And that's why the mainstream media see social media as a threat. Because see, social media, the people have more control. We can air, put our information. We can contribute. We can share news stories, and a lot of times it can run counter to what the mainstream media is putting out. And that's why social media is can be very messy and full of drama, but there's also a major pros to social media as well, because it can counterbalance the mainstream media. Because see, the mainstream media has decades on social media. But anyway, social media is a kind of equalizer, so to speak, to help balance out what the mainstream media puts out. But anyway, getting back to the topic about psyops attacks in the media, and as you know, we've been bombarded with explosive stories, one after another in the media. Of course, the big one last month was about Charlie Kirk. And then, of course, you have these mass unalivings, in the media, one after the other. And of course, and then with this whole story, about Charlie Kirk and all of that, Donald Trump has used that to say that, it was a radical left, and come to find out it wasn't. And I just want to say this: when he talks about radical left, it's the cold word for black. Even though we know that the radical left is not, black, so to speak, but it's a code word for black. So when he says left, radical left, left wing, he's really talking about us. Because, in the beginning, when Charlie Kirk was unalive, they tried to pin it on black. They were threatening the HBCUs. So watch when they talk about the left, the radical left. They're talking about us. So anyway, talking about these psyops attacks, I'm going to share an old story. It's really literally not an old story, but with all the stories coming out now, this story is old news. But I'm just going to show you these two old news stories. I'm going to talk about these two old news stories in this video to show you how the media use Psyops attacks on the people, on the populace. And in this video, I'm going to concentrate on how they use Psyops attacks on us, so-called Black people. So you may remember this story that came out in July of this year, where this man was charged with stabbing and injuring 11 people in a Walmart in Michigan. You remember that story? And it was and of course he was charged with terrorism and, you know, committing a mass stabbing in Walmart in Michigan. But yet he was subdued. He was eventually subdued by some Walmart customers. And it took a while for them to show the picture of the suspect, but they finally did. And this is him. His name is Brandon Gill. And then also they showed video footage of the customer subduing him. And as you can see, this is the man here with the locks. He actually pointed a weapon at the suspect, and that's what, you know, subdued him. And then you had others helping to subdue him as well. So it says the wild, footage shows the brave man yelling at the suspected attacker to drop the weapon in the parking lot of the superstore in Traverse City. So this was in Michigan. So this man who pointed the weapon at the suspect, he was hailed as a hero. And of course, the man who subdued the suspect, you see he has locks, or AKA dreadlocks, and he's a Black man. And of course, let's go back to the previous slide. The suspect was a white man. So this Black man was hailed as a hero for subduing the suspect in Walmart. And he was interviewed by Good Morning America, right after it happened. So this man was a fellow Marine. His name is Mr. Derek Perry. And so this Marine, he was interviewed by Good Morning America, and this is a video of him being interviewed. And he said, I did not see myself as any type of judge, jury, or executioner. And anyway, so this story, as I said, it came out, this happened in July. And so, you had this man being hailed as a hero for subduing this stabbing suspect in Walmart, because this man could have unalived 4 more people if he had not been for Mr. Derek Perry. And to see, one of our own, being hailed as a hero, of course it made us feel good. But I just however, not long after this happened, we get this. I mean, just the following month, and it was early in the month. It was just a couple of weeks later, because see, the Walmart stabbing happened in late July. This story that I'm going to talk about now, it happened in early August. So it was just a matter of a couple of weeks later. You had this Army base unaliving, mass shooting, where an Army sergeant is in custody after 5 soldiers, shot and injured 5 soldiers at Fort Stewart. I think this was in, Georgia. And this is just a screenshot of a news story about that. And it did not take long for them to show the picture of the suspect. So the suspect is, I think his name got cut off, but it's Cornelius Amentrio. I'm sorry, but his last name got cut off. But anyway, he was an Army sergeant. And he was charged with shooting 5 soldiers. Now, I don't think he didn't unalive any of them. But anyway, he was charged with shooting 5 soldiers and everything. And he also, like the stabbing suspect in Michigan, he also was subdued by, fellow soldiers. But unlike the Walmart case, where it took them a while to show a picture of the suspect, they almost instantly showed a suspect of the showed a picture of the suspect in the Army base shooting. And I'm going to explain to you why they did that. And then also too, and then like how they hailed the black man as a hero. They hailed the soldiers who subdued this man, the shooting suspect in the Fort Stewart shooting, as a hero. And they also awarded them medals. This is another picture of the suspect, shackled. And it was 6 soldiers who were awarded medals for acting as, for acting as gunfire erupted in Fort Stewart military base. And it's a picture of them being honored. And as you can see, the color of most of them. There's one who may be a little bit melanated, but this is a picture of them being honored so soon after the incident in Walmart. And I'm going to explain to you why they did that. Because see, they knew with the black man being hailed as a hero in the Michigan stabbing, they know that made black people, so-called black people, to feel good, to know that one of ours did something good. And they do not want us to feel good. They do not want us to be, to feel good about ourselves. And so I believe that somehow they can orchestrate things and make things pop off. Now, I can't fully explain it, but it just, how can it so conveniently happen so soon? This black man, pow-powing, his fellow soldiers so soon after another black man was hailed as a hero after subduing this white suspect. And I've seen a pattern of this. Now, those of you who, watch my channel, when I first started it, I shared something similar in my Carly Russell series, where I talk about how Carlisha Hood, who was being attacked in the restaurant by this black man. It was a black man she was being attacked by, and her son unalived him to protect his mother. But the media was trying to portray her and her son as cold-blooded murderers. But it came out that no, her son was trying to protect his mother, was protecting his mother. And they had to come back and correct that. And that made, that made us as, black people, especially black women, feel vindicated. And it was maybe less than a month later, Carly Russell, she said, so-called, made up the story that she was kidnapped, which I don't believe it was made up. But anyway, you have to go back and watch the video on that. But I notice a pattern when a news story comes out, especially if it's a mainstream news story that comes out to put us black people in a positive light. It's not long that another news story come out to put us in a negative light. It's like they don't like us to feel good about ourselves. They don't like us being happy. So they have to, if a story comes out making us, feel happy and feel good about ourselves, they have to make sure they broadcast the story to knock us back down. And so that's why I'm going to show you this. The vibration chart. Now, this is a vibration chart, shows the emotion frequency. This is emotional frequency chart. And as you can see, the positive emotions are at the top, and it's wide. It's a wide band. But the more negative the emotions get, the narrower it gets. So the top is enlightenment and the bottom is shame, guilt and shame. And you think about it. When we see news stories that are positive about us, we feel joy. You know, it gives us a sense of joy and even pride. But when we see no stories that put us in a negative light, it drops us down to the bottom. It causes us to feel guilt and it causes us to feel shame. And they want us to stay at the bottom. So that's why this is another chart. It's just some, the same type of chart, but it's just a different drawing. They want us to stay right here because, see, I'll go into that later. They want us to stay on the bottom. They want us to be in a constant state of guilt and a constant state of shame, grief, and all of that too. They don't want us up here. And I'm going to explain why. This is another chart. So see enlightenment at the top, guilt and shame is at the bottom. So they want us in that low vibrational state. And why they want us in that low vibrational state? Energy harvesting. So this is a piece from an article that I'm going to read. It's from the Medium, and it's titled Energy Harvesting, what it is and how it can elevate you. The brain and listening to your intuition. You are able to obtain energies from all different types of sources. What is energy harvesting? In a technological sense, energy harvesting refers to the process of capturing and converting ambient energy from the environment to usable electricity. This can include harvesting energy from sources such as solar, wind, thermal, or even vibrations. Devices designed for energy harvesting are often used in situations where conventional power sources are unavailable or impractical, such as in remote locations or on small sensors. Now that's in the physical. However, in spiritual and conspiracy theory circles, energy harvesting takes on a far different meaning. In these contexts, energy harvesting is often linked to the idea of siphoning life force, spiritual energy, or even emotional energy from individuals or groups to benefit others, usually those in position of power. See, the people in the positions of power, they do a lot of energy harvesting. And as I was showing you the emotional frequency chart, emotion is energy in motion, moving energy. So that's what emotion is. It's moving. And yes, it can be harvested. And yes, the powers that be does harvest energy. And let's just go. This is a different article. This is energy harvesting. And talks about the darker aspect. The second is the much darker aspect of this term. That is of organized groups that intentionally energy harvest. Those who sold their souls to the devil, for want of a better term. No religious context implied. This world currently exists in polarities: black, white, day, night, light, dark. I always think of polarity not as a reality, but rather as a manifestation that allows us to make sense of the world, like computers process combinations of old zeros and ones. These groups exist solely for the exploitation of another's energy for the purposes of greed and power. These groups have always targeted those known as light workers. And it is in my belief that these groups grew in number aligned with the 2012 Great Awakening. And a lot of people started waking up to the truth of things around this time in 2012. Let's not underestimate the profound organizational level of these groups. It's a high-level industry. If targeted, they do everything in their power to stop an awakening soul from reaching the level of ascension, where they become independently tapped into their soul self-knowledge, healed and no longer afraid of the world, These souls can no longer be manipulated. Thus, their energy cannot be harvested. So when we can't be manipulated, your energy cannot be harvested. And that's why they don't want us in the enlightenment stage. Because when we're vibrating high, they can't get us. See how the width of the high vibrational emotion is wide? That's that band. And see, the wider the band, the higher the vibration. And the wider the band, our band is, they can't get to us. That's why they don't want us at this high vibrational state, because when we're high vibrating, our band is wide. They can't get to us. They want us down here where our band is narrow, so they can more easily get to us. And see, and this is how the powers that be work. They maintain their power by harvesting our energy. They are a predatory, vampiric people. They're like vampires. They're of a low frequency. They can't create. And because they cannot create, they have to leech off and harvest the energy of the light workers, the people who are of a positive vibration. But of course, they can't let us vibrate high though, because when we're vibrating high, they can't get to us. So that's why they put these stories out in the media to keep us at a low vibrational state. That's why you have to be careful when you're watching the news. Sometimes you have to take a break from it. A lot of times I go days without even watching the news. I'm not saying don't watch it at all, because yes, I still like to watch the news, to stay informed. But a lot of times I have to take a break from it, because they put out these negative stories to keep us in that low vibrational state. And they especially target the melanated people. And why? Because that melanin is precious. Melanin is worth more than gold. And if you look it up, it's worth more than gold. It actually is. And I just want to read you this article. And this is from a university website, from Kennesaw University. And it's just a little snippet here. It's just an abstract of an article titled, fungal melanin extraction and purification. Because yes, they extract melanin. So melanins are pigmented compounds that exhibit a variety of chemical properties, including antioxidant potential and UV protection. Of course, we know that melanin has UV protection. They put melanin in sunscreen. And if you put sunscreen, have seen somebody apply sunscreen under a UV camera, that sunscreen is actually dark. It's almost like they're putting on blackface, like black paint, dark paint, and putting on blackface. So that goes to show melanin is in that sunscreen. Let's continue. Alternative sources for melanin are being explored because current methods produce the pigments through extractions from squid ink, which pose environmental sustainable risk. Additionally, current prices for melanin reach nearly $500 per gram. Previous research has revealed that certain fungi can produce melanin pigments and excrete them extracellularly when grown in media supplemented with L-dopa or L-tyrosine. In this current research, 7 species of fungi were grown in broths induced with L-dopa and L-tyrosine, and melanin pigments were isolated from the broths. The fungal melanin was extracted through acid precipitation and purified by repeated washings with organic solvents and water. A strain of Pleurotus and Ostratus, forgive me, these are scientific terms, was identified as the best producer of melanin while being an average producer of biomass compared to the other fungi tested. Across 9 extractions, the P. ostratus strain produced an average of 0.14 grams of melanin. Further investigation is needed to identify the best medium for the P. ostratus strain and to explore the incorporation of agricultural waste products as substrate. Additionally, Research is necessary for upscaling the fermentation process for increased production. So, they're working to extract melanin, but this is showing how precious melanin is. And of course, they feed off of the energy of the melanated people. Because see, melanin is not just a pigment. It's not just a pigment. Melanin also has a spiritual component. And a lot of people say that melanin, closely connect us to the Most High, to the source, to the divine source. It connects us more closely to the divine source. So of course, they value the energy of the melanated people most of all. Let's continue. So you see these different stories. These are headlines of old stories, that came out where officers unalived our people in cold blood, or vigilantes such as George Zimmerman unalived our people in cold blood, and none of them faced any consequences. If they were even charged, they were found not guilty at trial. And they made sure to report these stories. So and so faces no charges for the unaliving for such and such. So and so found not guilty. And they make these stories high profile. The little Ayanna Stanley Jones, 7 years old, murdered in cold blood. And they dropped the last charge. Sandra Bland saying she committed so and so. She's self-unalive. And yet evidence saying that wasn't so. Philando Castillo found, the officer who unalived him found not guilty. The officer who unalived Freddie Gray found not guilty. So you see story after story after story of them unaliving our people and being found not guilty. They are doing this for a reason. They are denying us justice for a reason. They do this to provoke us to get out on the streets, to protest, and to riot. No justice, no peace. They want us out there protesting and rioting. Even they try to get, provocateurs to get us to protest, to get us to riot. No justice, no peace. And even Donald Trump. Oops, sorry. Wrong slide. Even Donald Trump is out here. Even had Donald Trump out here, he's trying to, he's getting rid of the whole DEI and all that, trying to strike down the DEI, the things that was set up, for us to kind of, how can I say it, balance out, so to speak, give us equality. And he steady striking those down, getting rid of the DEI, things like that, the things that would help give us a leg up. Affirmative action, all of that, things like that, he's striking down. And he's steady targeting, us. And we're steady seeing our rights steady being taken away, one after another. This is all for a reason. And what they're trying to do, as I said, they're trying to provoke us to march, to get out there and protest. And why they want us to get out there and protest, they want to feed off of our energy. Because when people, a whole bunch of people are out there marching and protesting and chanting, no justice, no peace, that gives off a lot of energy. And it gives us a lot of energy, and they feed off of that energy. And as I said, the energy of the melanated people, they highly value. And that's why Donald Trump is doing all he can to try and provoke us, because, see, they really need our energy now, because, see, they know they're at the end. They know they're at the end. So they need our energy now more than ever. And that's what they're doing what they're doing, trying to get us to protest. But we're not taking the bait, and hopefully it stays that way. We're not taking the bait. But see, I know for me, the Most High is in control, because he's going to take care of his people. And that's why I just hope and pray that my people don't take the bait. Don't get out there and don't protest, because they need us to protest so that they can energy harvest. And I'm going to take it a little further with this energy harvesting, because these powers that be, they move. A lot of times they put out stories at certain times because they move according to astrology. Yes, they move according to astrology. When the moon is in a certain phase, when the planets are in a certain phase, because these planets, the moon, they're also sources of energy that they can use, that they feed off of. Now, we were taught that astrology was wicked, but in actuality, astrology is just a generic source, a universal source used by both the good and evil. So it's all about how you use astrology. It's just a generic universal source. It's a type of metaphysical science. And if you don't know what metaphysical is, metaphysical is a blend of the physical and scientific. It blends the physical world with the spirit. I'm sorry. It blends the spiritual with the scientific. So it's a mixture of the spirituality and science. That's what metaphysical is. And that's what astrology is. It's a type of metaphysical science. You can compare astrology with meteorology. So you have these like astrologists, when they look at your birth chart or your natal chart and say, okay, your placements are such and such and such. Well, at this time, at this date, it's best that you do such and such and such. It's just like they're given, it's like a weather forecast. That's all it is. It's generic. But you have those who say, oh, it's wicked, but yet some of these people who speak against astrology, they do it in the dark. They have their own little astrologers in the dark telling them, okay, you can, this time is the best time for you to do such and such and such. So don't believe them a lot of times when they always speaking against astrology, because sometimes they use it. But anyway, as I said, it's like meteorology. And as I said, astrology is used by the good and the evil. It's like Reinhardt says in the Bible, the rain falls on the just and unjust. The sun shines on the righteous and the wicked. That's how astrology is. Astrology is just a universal source used both by the righteous and the wicked. Now, I'll go a little more in, and actually, it's important to become a little familiar with astrology. At least, learn your birth chart, learn your natal chart. But I'll go, into more depth about astrology in a future video. But the reason why I brought this up, of course, I brought this up due to, energy harvesting. But I also brought this up because in another video, I want to use an old story that I actually talked about earlier this year to show you and give you an illustration on how the powers that be use astrology. It was an old news story that I talked about earlier this year on crystal mangum. Crystal mangum. Now, if those of you who would follow my, channel, you remember me doing this video on Trump on crystal mangum's confession and the spiritual roots of the black woman versus white patriarchy. Well, most high willing, I'll be doing part 2, so to speak. And I'm going to be showing how the powers that be use astrology with that whole case. Because in the video, I talked about it some when I talked about the moon and the moon phases, the moon phase and all of that. I talked about it just a little bit, but at that time, I did not know what I know now. So be on the lookout for a part 2, where I'm going to show you how they use astrology with this whole crystal mangum case and how they got things to work exactly the way they wanted it to work by using astrology. And that's why we have to make sure that we're equipped with the knowledge of how they use astrology. Does that mean we're to use it for wicked purposes? No. But we have to be hip to what the enemy, to what the powers that be are doing. So yes, it's important that we familiarize ourselves with astrology a little bit. Because that's exactly what they use with the crystal mangum story. And that's how they came out on top. So please be on the lookout for that video part 2, where I'm going to talk about the crystal mangum story. Yes, it's an old story. A lot of times it's good to use old stories to show how they do, because a lot of times these newer stories are still developing. But you use something old, a lot of times, a lot of the information already come out about it. So please, yes, be on the lookout for this, for my part 2 on the whole crystal mangum case. But anyway, that's all I have, and hopefully, you were enlightened by my message. And please like, share, and subscribe, and also leave a comment. And until the next time, be blessed.